started. Start the recording. And let's go. Welcome everyone to this last event, let's say before the summer break of the MCAA Around the World webinar series. Today it's a very busy webinar. We have a lot of speakers and it will be very interesting. And we will cover one of the most interesting topics that we had so far, which is bridging STEM and humanities social sciences discipline. We will talk about the general opportunities, the challenges, and personal experiences that all these speaker has, and will probably help you out in deciding what your career can look like and what are the connections and the opportunities. So I'm going to present all of the speaker, and starting from Ali. Ali is a postdoctoral researcher fellow at KNAVU in the Netherlands and is part of the Ode Europa project working on historical multilingual text processing. He was also a postdoctoral research fellow at Koch University in the European Research Commission project Emerging Welfare and Social Comquant, excelling in computational and quantitative social sciences in Turkey in between 2017 and 2017. He performed many research on extracting actionable information from social media in the scope of his PhD studies at Radboud University, and he has been working in industrial, governmental, and academic settings to process news and social media text in various domains throughout his career. And recently, he focused mostly on the robustness and the generalizability of text processing systems across context. We then have Gizem. She holds a PhD in software and information system from the College of Computing and Informatics at the University of North Carolina in Charlotte. Her research area include complex adaptive systems and social and political networks. She studies the effects of social influences on political behavior and group dynamics. At the present time, she's a postdoctoral researcher at the Computational Social Science Department of JASIS, working on the European Research Commission project Social Comquant, excelling in computational and quantitative social sciences in Turkey. Before joining JASIS, she has worked as a researcher in several institutions and projects, such as the Data Science Initiative and Complex System Institute at the University of North Carolina in Charlotte. And she's also Santa Fe Institute in Communication Science and Media Studies and Data Science for Social Good Europe at Nova University in Lisbon. We then Uğurgül, who she is a PhD candidate at Koch University and received her BA from McGill and MA from ITU School of Architecture. Her research interested mostly focus history and architecture of healthcare spaces and curational studies. With her birth as a sensory experience project, she aims to improve antennal and maternity wards. She is a member of the Sensing Spaces of Healthcare working group supported by the UK Research and Innovation Future Leadership Fellowship. She is also curating the upcoming Smithsonian exhibit Outbreak in Turkey. And finally, we will have Lucienne. She is a professor in the Archaeological and Historical of Art department at Koch University, where she has been teaching since 1993. At Koch University, she teaches courses of medicine and art and the architectural history of the hospital, in addition to courses in art history, heritage, and museum studies. Her research interests in medical and health humanities range from topics such as the ethical display of archaeological human remains in the museum to the role of art in the hospitals. With her PhD student, Tunç, she started the KU Medical and Health Humanities Initiative in 2019. And this round of introduction complete, I will give the role and the screen to Ali to start this webinar. And I thank you everyone who is participating, and I'm very look forward to your presentation and to our final discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the invitation and the organization. I am Ali Hürriyetoğlu, started working with computer science and ended up in social sciences, and love to share my journey with you. I will share my screen first. Do you see my first slide?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. This is a personal account of algorithms, machines, and social sciences. I have dealt with those stuff one after another, and this was a process of constant learning and some insights I could learn or experience. I will mention the education as relevant as only as relevant it is to my endpoint, some work experiences, summary of the projects, and then come into a bit more actual part, I think, how the data representation and algorithms in computer science look like, what social sciences think what computer science is, some combined insights, the interaction between these three items, algorithms, machines, and social sciences, and what I find or experienced as opportunities and challenges. I have a computer science degree with a lot of industrial knowledge or experience. I was interested in language in mind, so I did my master in cognitive science. I learned a lot on language there, but it was quite a lot theoretically for a computer engineering graduate. So I went to do something in between language technology. But from the very beginning in my when I am asked to come up with a project, I was coming up with something that would relate to human. So instead of solving a problem, a technical problem in a technical with only formulas, I would always look to use this knowledge. So from this motivation, my first main project was on how to help people who were suffering from an earthquake in Turkey. This is the traineeship work I contributed to this project. It is a large one. So what is happening in the world? In up to 70 languages now. I did Turkish there, and I was more interested. My interest developed even more, like what's happening in the world? What can we extract from it or understand? How it would be technically possible? How it would be useful or not, or dangerous or not? So you are collecting all this information, and this may become dangerous. And the institute that was implementing this project was Global Security Unit. It was about intelligence as well. But European Commission officers were using it. So although I was doing only some technical implementations, their use was a big question. And the copyright of the content is another dimension. So this is how it started. In my PhD, I worked on, again, events, language technology, some more machine learning, so automating things even more, and try to understand how my technology, my skills would help understanding events, helping people who are affected by the events, or helping people who want to enjoy or plan according to the events. So it was all about people, like the traffic, the health-related projects I did. What else here? Or floods. It was a main part of my work during my PhD. So I already had this orientation to look for something applicable to have some impact. This is some only visuals to show where we may be looking at information. Any word may be informing about time of the event, when the event will happen. So it is Dutch, so but it is only like saying till 5 days until some event. The event time is the 0, and those are the time before an event happens. This is what you would expect for verification on the left, and on the right, random words may be actually informing you about the event. This is a feature events calendar, what people talking about or what people observing. If they share it, like it is raining, can you really say there will be a flood in a couple of days in a certain place? Then I took a bit more broad view. How can we help experts to identify information in topics they decide based on their needs? So how can you filter it? A large data set based on perspective of a single expert. It can be in a humanitarian aim or social event organizer. The time of the information is critical. After an earthquake, you may say like, okay, there is that many messages posted, but what is in them? And this is temporally sensitive. It is the first day, the information is about this event happened, it happened like this and this, it affected there and there. But the following days, it is more about humanitarian needs. What is satisfied, what is still needed, this kind of information. Therefore, we will need to take time into account in relation to the event time. This is about traffic, standard information extraction. We did it with Central Statistics Netherlands, the authority for statistics in the Netherlands. And there as well, we wanted to know what is happening in this country to create some useful information for authorities and other people. This was in the scope of my education, and for the work, quick summary, I was a research assistant in a computer education and instructional technology. I always got some industrial experience as traineeships or in startups, in every opportunity, just to stay connected to the technical side and see where an impact may be possible. I said a lot about the PhD period. I spent 1.5 years full-time and 1.5 years be connected to the Statistics Netherlands and the postdoc in Koç University and now in the Netherlands. I would emphasize my period in Statistics Netherlands because it was the first real time for me to understand what is happening in a country. So it is very different than counting things on my laptop or computer or having a figure. It was about what information should we generate? Would generation of this knowledge harm anybody? What is the difference from traditional methods? Are the mismatches? So all these questions, or what is the data generation process? All these questions started there. One case study from the hackathons there, like based on the distance from a central city around this institute in Maastricht. We were in Heerlen, but Maastricht was too very close. How people search on Google based on their distance? How can we observe this? What people give? What is the priority of the people based on their distance? This is about emotions of people. This was already done when I started there, but it's a great example. On various social media platforms, my colleagues were checking all social media platforms. There was at the time maybe 10, and each one of them provided different type of information. So using only one platform and saying I found the truth may not be really valid. This is what the lesson there. And after that, I started with the Emerging Welfare Project. It was a 5-year project from Erdem Yörük. We created a global database of events with the aim to understand how is the welfare money is spent. Is it politically oriented? Is it really, what were the criteria? How is the pattern of the events evolves across countries, languages, periods? We were applying a lot of computation, but the percentage of social science was really much more than previous projects because we were questioning every step. So are we getting the real picture of what is happening on the ground? Because we were analyzing the news articles, we were using automated tools, and at every step you may be losing something. And how can you really defend something is true or correct or valid to social scientists? These guys are really critical and they know what they are talking about it or what has happened. It was a real challenge. Anyway, millions of news articles in many languages, multiple sources, a lot of double checks or annotations, training data, evaluation data. So you can't really say, okay, my computer says something, should really measure it. Can you measure it? Can you tell the computer what you are after? So computer doesn't understand your rules. Actually, no notion of society or history or anything. So we were creating gold truth, training with it, evaluating with it, and it was maybe majority of the work. I am on my computer and I automate something, writing some fancy algorithms or visualizations or demos. It was maybe 40% of the work, the fancy part or the visible part. But the collaboration between social scientists and us was the key there. We were always in contact with prominent people in terms of workshops or visiting them to really learn from them or to understand what to expect. Or these guys, one of the leaders was creating such databases for 50 years. And we were discussing with him like, okay, you did it before 50 years, before 40 years as well, before 30 years as well. And what do you think the state of the art or developments in machine learning or computation would help us? What will be the next achievement that can be targeted? So we organized shared tasks to tackle these tasks together, to agree on the operationalizations, conceptualizations, or just to identify limits, like you can't really understand what is happening in China for in terms of contentious politics due to the lack of the information. It doesn't matter how fancy algorithms or computation power I have. It is a different sociological, political phenomena. In these days, maybe in 5 or 10 years, there will be a different picture. This is only the screenshots of our product. Again, a very minor part. The representation was only a small part of the whole work, but still we are proud of it. Next, after this emerging welfare, we worked on social component. It is a twinning project. Leading institutions in Europe help developing countries to progress in or learn a certain topic or domain, which was computational social science. In our case, it is mostly anything other than research, although they expect us to do research as well. So workshops, summer schools, establishing the research master program, research center. Really a lot is going on there, and I would invite anybody interested to have a look. It is a broad, and Gizem will tell a bit more maybe about it. And we will have our summer school end of July anyway. There is a new project. The agreements between Koç University and the European Commission is being done, but if you search for it on the web, you may find some information. So it is going more deeper, more application. My current project is I thought I can do it, so I was accepted to the position. And the aim here, the challenge here is to add the temporal dimension to my work. So social sciences, humanities, computation, and how this will be affected by diachronic changes in language or quality of the data or lack of knowledge, because almost all of the fancy models for text processing we have know the corpus they are trained on. And the corpus, the text archive that is being used, is mostly about web data, recent data. So how good it can be in processing data from 17th century in 7 languages in Latin. This is not going bad. It is quite okay, and we are working on improving it. And it is touching on generalizability of these automated systems. So I will focus on 2 aspects, the computation and then the social sciences, how each discipline weave the world. I don't know how much time remains. Not much. Okay. The data structures. In computer science, in mathematics, you have points. We assume these points are equal. Their characteristics is less important, although you may have sophisticated objects. They are deterministic, they are straightforward. It is a mathematical notion. You need it to be able to apply something. And algorithms, really, you assume every step will go normal, and you will use limited sources, and you can measure its quality or its speed or its time. So it is an easy, good, straightforward world. But in social sciences, these assumptions, many of these assumptions doesn't hold. Each person, each human is different, or each group of people has different characteristics. It is rarely deterministic or straightforward. You can't really say whether there is an endpoint, although you find procedures or customs that has endpoints, and you can't really measure something. Is it better to the discussion from the ethical discussions for like, would an autopilot kill 1 or 5 people? You can't say anything about this measurement. Anyway, computers do in shot. How should people be ordered? This is a dilemma. This is an ethical question. Although the computer can say something, the social science may not agree or object. We will still use data representations automation. So it is a tool for us, but we should, because it is already there, what you see on your search results may be different from mine. How this is really adjusted. Maybe I am paying more for some service than you or less. So it is already in our life, and we must be learning how to position ourselves, improve it, improve this relation. The opportunities, social scientists used to do manual work, and they are really quite okay for them, but they are very happy if they see something that can be quicker or that can scale or be automated. We are human, and why not make solving something a bit quicker than usual? They love to talk to computer scientists. We are human, we are living in a society, so we learn a lot about ourselves when we work on social science projects. And we are the cool guys in the room. They listen to us, and we are supported. I really saw a lot of support and love from my colleagues in social sciences departments. But social scientists scare because we don't understand their sophisticated discussions. I tried my best, but I gave up for some topics, or I learned where to stop or where to listen a bit more. Being a human and living in a society doesn't mean we have the knowledge to decide on what to encode, how to encode. So is gender binary, female, male? Before 5 years, I would just program it like this and continue. Now I will not do it without a confirmation based on the specific needs of a study and in collaboration with a social scientist. If in a collaboration with a social scientist, if you are not engaged, you may remain as only the programmer of the study. So you should be engaged, you should be active, although they should not listen to you, and they will not, because they really know a lot about society and you. But still, you should try. And the most important to tell these guys, look, it is fancy, it is magical, but it has these errors. Or this and not this and this, or under these conditions. This is a very critical thing to do. Mostly what we see on the screen is not true. We should interpret it together with domain experts. Again, the challenge, we are the cool guys in the room, but we may be misunderstood as fancy claims. The marketing stuff may be sounding computation has already solved everything, but actually for real cases, it is not the case. And we are, as computer scientists, if we only remain as computer scientists or software engineers, we are really naive and simplistic. So we should have the position of learning and accepting this position. So this is workshops, whatever, you can find them if you want. And thanks for your time. And sorry, I exceeded time, I guess, a bit. Any comment or questions?
Yeah, we would proceed now with the next presentation, and we will have the question answer discussion at the end. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I will share my screen. I think now you can see it, right?
Yes, confirm. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. So hello, everyone. Today, I'm going to talk about my experience, my research experience in understanding social and behavioral and political behavior with computational social science, specifically in social networks perspective. My name is Gizem Bacaksizlar Turbic, and I'm a postdoctoral researcher at Team Digital Society and Observatory at GESIS. Let me talk about my background, academic background in STEM field. I received my bachelor's degree in industrial engineering from Yıldız Technical University, and my master's degree in industrial engineering from Boğaziçi University in 2014. During the last year of my master's degree, I was a teaching assistant at Bilgi University, helping courses like statistics and probability, systems thinking and engineering too. Introduction to engineering, and my master's degree was specifically about systems modeling, systems dynamics modeling. And after that, I moved to the US for my PhD in computing and informatics. Our lab was Complex Systems Institute, so we were interested in complex world problems. And I was also research assistant at Data Science Initiative during that time. And after my PhD, I was a postdoctoral researcher at Santa Fe Institute. I will talk about the project there with you in the following slides. It was about group dynamics. In Portugal, in the communication science department in 2020, before I joined GESIS. If I introduce you some of my previous projects, I worked with Darüşşafaka students on systems language of ecology. We were collaborating with them at Boğaziçi University to let them understand the environmental problems. And it was such a great experience for me to work with high school students to broaden up their knowledge with system dynamics, modeling, and also environmental problems included. And for my master's thesis, I was interested in the feedback dynamics between poverty and education opportunity. We wanted to understand if we can understand or break the vicious cycle of poverty to give equal opportunities in education for all. And in 2017 of the summer project, I joined Data Science for Social Good program in Portugal and teamed up with the city of Rotterdam. We were economics, aerospace engineers, computer engineers, working with the Rotterdam data scientists to identify rooftop usage in Rotterdam, because we wanted to detect green rooftops from the satellite image to keep the water on the top, on the roofs, so that the city won't be affected by the floods. And in 2018-19, for my PhD thesis with my advisors here, I'm sharing also my collaborators' pictures with you here. I was interested in collective behaviors, how anger, specifically for the protest emotion, how anger spread in protest networks on Twitter. And I will talk about it a little bit more in the following slides. And at Santa Fe Institute, as I mentioned, with Dr. Mirta Galesic, we worked on the group dynamics, how group threat affects people's behaviors, how the dynamics of commenters networks across time and political spectrum changed, and this type of social science related questions. And she is from psychology background, so I was from the computer science background. It was a really great interdisciplinary project. And before joining GESIS, I was in Portugal in the communication science department, working on understanding how Portuguese parties engage on Facebook in the year of 2 major elections, and how political parties communicate with their audience with George Martins Rosa. And my current project at GESIS, as Ali mentioned, is Social Compound Project. It's an acronym for excelling the quantitative and computational social sciences in Turkey. We partnered up with Koç University and ISI Foundation in Italy, and here we have a really good team. Ali is also my colleague in that project. So what we do at GESIS, we are organizing workshops, especially identifying gaps tailored for Turkish participants. We develop teaching materials and curriculum on computational social science courses. We also develop online teaching modules, and all of these are open and accessible materials. We care about sharing knowledge publicly and across borders, and that's why we have also exchange program at GESIS. We really look forward to applications. If you are interested in, please check out our webpage, and also our GitHub page will be available for all these online teaching modules for the computational social sciences. My research interest in broad term applied computational social science so far. So I observed data from the social media platforms. For instance, these images from schools after school shootings, students came together, showed their reactions. Of course, dominant reaction is anger, and some of them are there in the offline world, but some of them are also in the online world, sharing the things on their phones, as you see in these yellow squares. So what we can understand from that, we observe they create the networks in the online world with their interactions, different types of interactions. So we say the social and political networks in that domain. And then after understanding these networks with the network science approach to simulate this world and with the different policy and scenario analysis, I use agent-based modeling and system dynamics modeling. What is our research motivation here? Basically, reading others' comments can shape people's opinions about the story, its author, and the media outlet, and also help spread opinions, claims, and which counters the mainstream narrative. They spread the emotions as well, right, while they are reading the comments, posts, or any other reactions on the social media. And also on many social media platforms, some users can become more influential and visible than others, who have the power to steer the conversation in a particular direction and to promote a particular style of discourse. So we ask different questions, and some of them are here I want to share with you to also show which type of methods we can use. For instance, how much discussions does one event generate? What is the dominant sentiment of this discussion? Do the users get emotionally involved with the content? Or how do users interact with each other online? Do protest developments, for instance, bring people together in online space? And how does a group that feels threatened behave online? And in computational social science methodologies, we can understand with temporal analysis, over time analysis, for the dominant sentiment, we have sentiment stance and emotional analysis that we use natural language processing tools, machine learning algorithms, and some dictionary-based methods that we collaborate with our social science colleagues. And also for the interactions in the online world that I mentioned, the social networks, these interactions can come from likes, up and down votes, shares, replies, mentions. So we can build networks from these interactions about the actors. In more detail, what I'm interested in, influence and group dynamics. So what are the important aspects of these networks? Can I understand the influence in these networks? Like, who are the most influential actors? How does the influence change in the network? Or do people group around a specific actor? Do we see really a polarization in the networks, for instance? One group is talking about this and the other group is talking about another subject. And for this, we use network science methods, for instance, centrality measures and community detection algorithms. And for the research pipeline, I'm sure we all are going through it. We have a research project. We might have some research questions or collaborate with our colleagues to better state our research questions. Maybe you have already the data collection process at hand. You have your data, you have your observations, or you start your data collection process in the computational social science project you have. And there are different types of data sets. We can have some experimental data that you can have some games to understand how users are behaving in the online world. Or if you have, of course, approval for your application, you can have also social media experiments, or ads, or surveys. And there are also observational data, as I said, like from some social media platforms, or interviews and surveys that we know, traditional methods that we use. All of these methods, all of these data collections have its own limitations, and we are aware of it, and we are also working on it more from computational perspective and also from social science perspective in the field. There is one limitation, for instance, the representative problem, or another one is technical, more API accesses, or privacy issues, how we are going to deal with it, how we can understand really user behavior without harming anyone, without also making it too public, and with also having users' consent. So after we collect the data, we can also link these different data sets to better understand or overcome these limitations depending on our research project. We have different methods, like I mentioned, network science, NLP methods, deep learning, machine learning, and statistics, basic statistics, of course, and MRP methodologies. Then we move on to our data analysis, of course, write-up, presentation, and publication. So there are different social media platforms that we can use for data collection: Twitter API, Spacegraph API, YouTube comments, WhatsApp group messages. These might all seem available, but as I mentioned, there are limitations for you need to apply for a developer account to have access on these platforms, or you need to be very careful with your data collection process. For instance, you can also have web scraping or using Discus API. Okay, I have all articles, all the comments, all the commenters' notes that I can see the interactions in between them. But also, as I said, we always consider the limitations in the background. For instance, one example from the data collection on Twitter, how we can access tweets. We can use some specific hashtags, keywords, or if we know the users, we can use their user IDs as well. And this is one example, one tweet from Charlotte protests when we were in Charlotte in 2016. Unfortunately, Keith Lemon Scott was shot by a police officer, and we had a state of emergency there, and for a week we had a protest. So we worked with scholars from computational social science backgrounds, communication science and journalism, criminal science, to find out specific keywords. Okay, I need to get the tweets, but I need to know these keywords, what really people use to talk about this event. And we came up with Charlotte Uprising, Charlotte Riot, Iman Scott, and etc. And we reached around 1.5 million tweets and 400,000 of users. Then we detect specific emotion that I mentioned, anger, because it's the triggering emotion, and we use linguistic inquiry and word count. It's a dictionary-based algorithm, and there are different methods as well to detect emotions in the literature. If you're interested in, I wrote some references in the reference section. And then we know that now which users have some higher anger or lower anger, or which tweets have the anger itself. So we want to see the temporal analysis, right? How much discussions are generated was one of our questions. So tweets per hour was increased after people heard about the Keith Lemon Scott shooting. And for the second peak happened when the governor and officials declared they are not sharing the video from the instance. And when the tweets were decreasing, then they started a little bit increasing again after Keith Lemon Scott's wife shared the video. And this also showed in the anger distribution too. I will show you in the following slide. Then after the recording was shared by the officials, the protests were stopped. Do users get really emotional about the content itself? We saw that now maximum anger per hour, how it changed over time during the protests. We saw that first 2 days were the angriest days for the protest, and it was slowly decreasing, but then after the video shared, it's getting to the lower levels. And how do we create these networks? We created from the links, mentions and retweets. One user is mentioning or retweeting the other one, then this creates the network, right? We talked about the interactions. And this is the, for instance, Charlotte's network sample to show you online space. And who are these nodes? Who are these actors? I show here with different colors, different modularity classes, different groups. So higher modularity means they group around these people. They are the highest group in the purple one, and blue one and green one, for instance. Purple one is the media channels. So protesters wanted to be seen and heard beyond the North Carolina. So they were mentioning other news channels like BBC, CNN News, CNN Internationals, and green ones are Black Lives Matter protesters. They were organizing the event, and the officials are in the blue line that they are mentioning and tweeting their messages. For another project that I mentioned at Santa Fe Institute, we worked on how does a threatened group behave online. For that, we collected millions of comments and commenters and articles from US news media channels, and 4 of them, like Mother Jones, Atlantic, and Breitbart, and The Hill. And we specifically focused on the threatening event for specific groups, left-leaning and right-leaning. For instance, 2016 US elections, 2017 inauguration, and 2017 Charlottesville rally, and 2018 US midterm elections. And this is, for instance, one of the examples from the Trump's victory speech article, and then people were commenting on it, right? This is a data for us. It's an opportunity to understand what people think about it and how they group around the people. So we created the commenters networks from the reply trees. Okay, commenter B is replying to commenter A, so I have one link it being seen, but there are also multiple articles, right? We have all these comment trees, and we come up with the commenters networks, which we call weighted networks. For instance, commenter C responds to commenter A 3 times, right? And we get this information computationally counting commenter C replies to commenter A, and then here in the same article, commenter C can reply to commenter A again in the comment thread, and for another article, commenter C responds to A once more. So that's why we count 3 times, and or 2 times once this goes with all around the 100,000s of articles. What we wanted to understand how groups under threat behave. And we know from the literature that social science literature really helps us here, the collaboration, the theories, and we appreciate this type of interactions. Groups under threat tend to become more homogeneous and follow their thought leaders. So our hypothesis came here that inequality of influence increases after clear out group threats. When the threat is lower, the influence will be lower. When the threat is higher, then the inequality of influence will be higher. I will show you here two of the new sites. One is the left. And for events that I mentioned, and this is the skewness of the distribution. We look at it, how it changes over time, and we see that yes, when the threat is high, and also for the right leaning, but when it is lower, it seems the lower. Many factors beyond those that are shown here affect user behaviors, including related political and societal events, automated algorithms, and trolls. Effects of these factors should be studied in more detail in future. Trolls effect has been studied, but in this computational social science research lately even more. And another important research avenue is a detailed content analysis. Okay, we do something with computationally, as Ali also mentioned in his talk. It's great, we can have visualization, but really what these tweets say, what we use annotations to understand these tweets, comments, right? So to go into more detail with the content analysis, how it changes over time and in response to different events, and how it might anticipate further events and developments. And if I wrap up my results for the empirical perspective, we saw that users with fewer followers, like less influential, for instance, they are not celebrities or governors, they are angrier. And we see that anger level is so low when it comes to the media channels or governors or officials. And if the influence is directed, like we look at it in the networks, then the spread of anger is limited by its direction. But in real world, it is not by direction. You can see in the offline network as well. So we need to consider not only online networks, but also offline networks together to better understand the dynamics of influence. And for the comments networks that I showed you, we saw that groups experiencing higher threat from specific other groups tend to show an increase in inequality of influence, and whereas groups experiencing lower threat tend to show a decrease in inequality of influence. So I talked about digital behavioral data, specific to tweets and online discussions from news websites, and we talked about the limitations as well as the opportunities. Specifically, I talked about 2 to 3 computational social science methods, and there are many more, but I specifically talked about data analysis for the temporal analysis and emotional analysis specifically for anger distributions, then network analysis with influence dynamics and communities in networks. Several online data sources, as well as traditional ones, are available for computational social science studies. Comments, posts from Facebook public pages. We talked about tweets, YouTube comments, Reddit comments, online discussions and surveys, images, speech, videos, reviews. These are all opportunities now with their own limitations. And if you are interested in more on this research to learn about it, there are great talks from Guesses Meet the Experts, my colleague. Real data. I will highly recommend you to check it out. And I wrote also different references in case you are interested in this research. And thank you so much for your attention. Hopefully we will discuss more in the end of the session. Now Uğurgül, I guess.
Okay. Well, thank you. My name is Lucienne Thys-Şenocak, and I'll be talking today with my PhD student Uğurgül Tunç about medical and health humanities. And I first want to thank Ceyhun for bringing us together today, this evening, because it's really actually quite an interesting to look at the research that's going on in computational social science, especially I was thinking during the presentations of both Ali and Gizem that the kind of analysis that you're doing would be particularly interesting for us with the issues that are going on right now in Turkey today with the assassination of the cardiologist and the amount of social networking that's going on is showing, I think, the incredible anger and misunderstanding and the kinds of approaches that maybe medical and health humanities can take to make this sort of tension a little better. But what we wanted to do today is Uğurgül and I talked about just having more of a conversation and about what medical and health humanities is. So first of all, it's really approaching the question of medicine and a number of different aspects about medical education, but also a range of different approaches to the health industry, and looking at this primarily through the humanities. So for those of you who might not be familiar with the field, I want to just give a brief introduction. It is a field which is fairly recent, beginning in the 1940s and moving into what we call sort of the second wave of medical humanities. This second wave includes a kind of subfields of visual medical humanities and also what's increasingly referred to as health humanities as a sort of larger umbrella title of that field. So the first wave, and Uğurgül will talk a little bit more about this, but the first wave was really meant to kind of humanize doctors and nurses and make them solve a lot of the sorts of problems in medical education and medical practice with things like burnout and lack of compassion for patients. So that's a lot of what we see in the first part of the field is addressing that. The second part with medical and health humanities, and then critical medical humanities, which Uğurgül will talk a little bit more about later, is really looking at the whole question of basically the discourse that's used and the way in which, say, the medical system in general is structured. So we started in 2019 an initiative called the Koç University Medical and Health Humanities Initiative. And this was something that we did for a number of reasons. One of these is because we have a fairly recently established medical and nursing school. Nursing school is much older, of course, at Koç University, but a fairly recently established medical school. And in our department, which is archaeology and history of art, one of the things that we really saw was a big gap between the kinds of, say, education that is being given to medical and, say, nursing students, and then what is happening in the humanities and to some extent in the social sciences. So part of what we wanted to do was to gather different researchers, faculty, and graduate students together to get a conversation going among different departments, both in the medical school, in our College of Social Science and Humanities, and see where there might be some synergies. So basically the initiative was started with that purpose, and it's gone on now a couple of years. We started before the pandemic, and it became even more relevant during the pandemic because there was so much discussion about medicine and how different ways in which medicine is practiced was impacting all of our lives. So we have had a number of projects and events. We're going to just summarize those very briefly. And some of our research projects, 3 main areas that we're doing research in. And then we'll basically wrap up and see if there's questions. I'll let you pick up from there, Uğurgül.
So, like, first of all, we want to talk a bit about what the field is. This, as Lucienne mentioned, is a fairly recent field, and it's multi and interdisciplinary. And it's one of its aims is to bring together branches of the humanities, arts, and social sciences with the study and practice of medicine and health-related sciences, and also to bring together medical education with arts and humanities. With the work we do, for example, we're trying to develop courses for medical students, nursing students, courses which are also open to students from other fields, obviously. The field basically tries to explore how different disciplines in the humanities and social sciences can benefit medical education. And this was actually one of the goals, one of the main goals of the first wave, as Lucienne mentioned. And it also posits that research and pedagogy used in the humanities and social sciences can provide unique insights into history, culture, and behavior of healthcare institutions and practices. And just to give you a quick summary of how the field developed. So in the 1920s, we see this development of history of medicine degree programs, first starting with Johns Hopkins University in the United States. And then there were certain movements that involved art and medicine in the UK in the 1940s, and mainly developing in tuberculosis sanatoria. And the term was coined in late 1940s, not as a discipline, but in a publication. The term was coined, but not with the idea of like having a discipline as medical humanities. And there were some attempts to establish departments in the United States starting in the late 1940s, but this wasn't realized until the late 1960s when Hershey Medical Center of Pennsylvania departments within a medical school. And we see the field becoming more international in the 1970s. And later in the 90s, we see availability of funding, mainly in the UK from major institutions such as the Wellcome Foundation. Today, we see the emergence of critical medical humanities, which started, like mostly in 2009 with the Durham Manifesto, which is a very well-known document in the medical humanities field, basically announcing the beginnings of the second wave, and critiquing the previous scholars in the field for focusing mainly on medicine, medical education, and the medical field, basically, rather than making humanities and arts and social sciences an equal partner within the field, and also for not being more inclusive. And within this idea of not being inclusive enough, the idea of health humanities was born later in 2010s. And in 2020, with the COVID-19 pandemic, the field started becoming even more popular with lots of events being organized online and more people becoming aware of their actually role in the field, because many scholars are already doing medical and health humanities research without being aware that this is actually what they're engaged in. So there are many disciplines which can contribute to the field of medical and health humanities. Lucienne, if you want to talk a bit about that.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, I mean, we use the term medical and health humanities, but you can see from the different boxes here that this also really extends to a lot of disciplines that would be under social sciences. So, I mean, that's always a kind of a very artificial division anyway. I think humanities and social sciences, we have a lot of methodologies that overlap. But you can see here, these are some of the fields that have been involved in and where medical humanities has made different sorts of inroads, both in terms of research and teaching. Among these, where we really look at, because of our own expertise, is in art history, archaeology, cultural heritage.
Architecture as well. Architecture.
No, I'm getting there, to architectural history and museology and curatorial studies. So sensory studies as well, as you'll see from one of our projects that we'll talk about in a bit. So there's quite basically it's a very, very inter and multidisciplinary field. And that's what I think makes it really exciting to be in. And also something which, as Uğurgül just mentioned, there's a lot of people who are actually kind of practicing medical and health humanities that aren't really aware that they could be kind of affiliated with a group of people that are asking some of the same questions. Maybe in slightly different ways. And that's precisely why we really are, we're interested in starting the initiative, was to bring people who are working together on different sorts of issues where we can find some common ground. And so I think we can.
Yeah. So there, as I mentioned earlier, now there are lots of institutions offering funding and opportunities for researchers in the field. Wellcome Trust in London is one of these, and there is a CHCI, which is associated with the Calvary Mellon Foundation, yeah, and there are several programs in the United States, and Academy of Neuroscience for Architecture, which Lucienne and I are also members of, at Salk Institute, is one of the major institutions that actually support research in the field. And there are now, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic emerging, many online courses and certifications and degrees have been offered and still continue to be offered today. And there are several journals which publish research in the field, medical journals specifically, like very established medical journals such as The Lancet and JAMA now publish research in medical and health humanities. And Lucienne, if you want to.
Yeah, so I mean, so that's one of the things that there are a whole range of publications, which if you are working with somebody who's, say, in the medical school or the nursing school, that, I mean, that's a great opportunity to publish together in these different journals. And so it's nice to be aware of those. So another area that has also really flourished in the last 20 years has been these museum and medical school partnerships. And that's something we're particularly interested in. As in Uğurgül's introduction, she's involved in the curatorial work of a Smithsonian exhibition on infectious diseases that's being organized here. And these partnerships have been largely for medical students and nursing students. And you can see their there's a number of them in, well, actually, most medical schools now in the US and in Europe do include these kinds of partnerships with museums. So sometimes that means the museum comes in some way to the medical school in the form of a curator giving lectures, but more often it's with medical students going into the museum and really learning how to perfect observational skills and how to articulate what they're seeing. And these are the sorts of skills actually that art historians are trained in, is looking very carefully and very often in very detailed and intense ways, and sort of slow looking at works of art and then translating those and communicating what they understand those works to mean. And this is actually a skill that is in fact very, very useful for people in the medical profession as well, because they're often looking at people, diagnosing different sorts of diseases and conditions, and then articulating that. So these are a kind of crossover skill set that you can see the sort of popularity of these programs. This is just a small number that has been recently researched by this group in 2019. And also in Turkey, there's a whole movement afoot as well.
So is there anything you want to add?
Oh, no, it's okay.
So the medical humanities programs, like in Turkey, haven't started with us. Obviously, there were some initiatives before at Marmara University and Gazi University and Hacettepe University, for example. And today, these programs are not usually offering like required courses to medical students. They're more of an like elective things, and at Koç University we hope that we will be able to integrate medical and health humanities more into medical education, particularly in the preclinical years. So if you want to talk about
just basically that's how we started really perceiving this need to bring different faculties together and different kinds of research that was going on. And we started very small with five faculty and graduate students from the College of Social Science and Humanities, and then 5 from the School of Medicine and Nursing. Essentially, another big challenge we have, those of you who know our university, is that we have this lovely campus here on the right that's up looking over the Black Sea, and then we have the hospital. This is the new Koç University Hospital. It's downtown. So we have this big distance already. And so part of the initiative was also to kind of bridge not just the kind of gaps in the discipline, but also just figuring out ways that we could be closer because we have this distance between our campuses. So that's another sort of impetus behind the medical and health humanities.
And the pandemic kind of taught we can bridge that gap.
Yeah, well, it actually, we started doing this on Zoom before the pandemic. We started our meetings because medical faculty very often cannot travel up to our campus and vice versa because of the traffic and the distance and the very kind of limited time that everybody has. So we have been very much Zoom based. And I think in that respect, we were pretty well positioned when the pandemic began to kind of keep going with this, and a lot more discussions happened, I think, because we were sort of already started in that way. Yeah.
So as you have noticed, we call our initiative Koç University Medical and Health Humanities Initiative as opposed to Medical Humanities Initiative. And as I mentioned earlier, like Lucienne also talked about this a bit, the second wave, or the more critical branch of the field, is calling for a more inclusive field. And in response to this, we wanted to make sure that we have our name reflects that idea of inclusivity. And so we decided to add Health Humanities in the name of our initiative. And there are other alternative names which reflect the second wave or the more inclusive movements in the field, such as critical medical humanities, narrative medicine, visual medical humanities, Health Humanities, and medical anthropology. These are, of course, like not all of the names that have been brought up so far. And narrative medicine is actually a program that started at Columbia University College of Physicians and Surgeons, where Lucienne and I also participated in a program, a certificate program. And now during the pandemic, they started offering online degrees as well. So if you're interested in that, you can always look it up. And it's a very interesting program and interesting skills. They teach you very interesting skills, which will help you not only in the practice of medicine, but in other fields, whichever field you're working in. And we've also developed several courses. Lucienne and I, we have put together 2 courses and offered these last year at Koç University. If you would like to talk a bit more about them.
No, I think I'm conscious that we're running short of time. So, I mean, any of these, we'd be happy to send any syllabi if you're interested in. These are courses that are, they're always changing, and also our colleague Inge Oterhaven has also developed a course, Medicine, Healing, and Health in Classical Antiquity and the Early Byzantine period. So
yeah, Ayiko has also a course, and I believe Ceyhun's course, one of his courses, yes, related to the field. Maybe he can add a few words, a few sentences about that later. And I also want to mention that before the pandemic, we also offered a workshop for mostly the archaeology and history of art students in collaboration with medical school on anatomy. One of the anatomy professors at our medical school actually offered this workshop. So the collaboration works both ways, and students from medicine and also social sciences, they get to explore the other side and they have opportunities to learn how they can integrate ideas from other disciplines into what they do.
And also, yeah, the student initiative started the year before last, so that's been a good, the KU Heart. So that's been nice that there's been sort of an inspiration from the medical student side, but that's again open for all students as well, but driven basically from the medical school students.
And so, now they're also working on establishing a journal.
Yeah. So one of the things that we just recently did, and Ceyhun was speaking in this, so but this was a symposium. We have an annual symposium at our research institute, and this was basically looking at mainly architecture and the built environment of healthcare in Anatolia, starting from essentially from antiquity until sort of the modernist, till 1950s or 60s. So that is recently, we had that recently, and then the publication will be out next year. So we're all working on our papers for that. But just very briefly, 3 projects that we're now involved in. Just wanted to talk about this very quickly. And the first is on very much architectural history and looking at how medicine and space, spatial aspects of, say, the early Republican period in Turkey. That's with the Admiral Bristol Nursing School. That's one project that Uğurgül and I are working on together. And the birth is a sensory experience, which Uğurgül will talk about in a bit, which is, again, uses a lot of very interesting narrative-based research, a lot of oral history as well, to look at issues to do with healthcare and the spatial aspects of where that happens and the sensory aspects of that. And then recently, we were in the US at the Society of Architectural Historians looking at medical museums and the ways in which those are created, and the different ways in which medical museums have a very wide range of goals and missions. And so that was that's a sort of a third project for us that's been really fascinating. So just really quickly, because I know we're already over time, so just quickly about the project on the Admiral Bristol School of Nursing. Uğurgül, did you want to pick up on that?
So we used for this project, for the Admiral Bristol School of Nursing project, we made use of some of the resources available at the university's library. And we came across several plans prepared by one of the most celebrated modernist architects of Turkey, Sedat Hakkı Eldan. And the building, which was designed for the school in the late 1940s, is no longer available. It's been demolished in 1999. So we are trying to explore and understand how the nursing the changes in the profession through architecture and the changes made to the plans, to the building. And so, for example, here you see a bridge. I won't go too much into the details, but this bridge was added to the building at a later phase, and to connect the hospital to the place where the nursing students were educated and also lived in. And we see this bridge as sort of an umbilical cord connecting the two buildings, like the nursing school as a child and the hospital as the mother. And this kind of takes back the new building, the school building, to an earlier idea where nurses had to live within the hospital space, and their lives were very strictly controlled in the institution. And so we are trying to question to what extent things changed for nurses, and also since the profession was viewed as a female profession for a very long time, we're trying to understand the gender dynamics and how that also evolved within time. And Lucienne Hocam, is there anything you want to add?
Just, I mean, part of what we're working with are architectural drawings. And as Uğurgül pointed out, this was in the middle of Nişantaşı. So neither of these buildings, these have both been taken down. So this is also interesting for us to look at how modern architecture and some actually really important architects who built these this is a bit of a lost heritage. It's unfortunate that we don't have this building any longer. We had it till quite recently. And that's often the fate of modern architecture from this period of the 1930s to 50s. It's not really valued until it's actually too late. So, but this is one of the drawings that gives us some sense of what this type of architecture looked like in this nursing school.
And we also can go into arguments about modernism and also like Orientalism or the East, like so-called East-West dynamics by looking at these plans and drawings as well, which is also interesting. And the school that we are looking at, like Admiral Bristol School of Nursing, is today the Koç University School of Nursing. Actually, it was originally founded in the 1920s, before the Turkish Republic, actually. And so it was the first nursing school founded here, and a lot of American influence in the development of nursing profession in Turkey. And we see lots of interesting similarities when we look at photographs from the United States at nursing schools around the same time, and from the albums available at our library. As you can see here, the furniture and the way the uniforms, they're very interesting similarities, and the similarities are also present at schools, at nursing schools established by Americans in Japan as well, for example, which is interesting. And this study also is sort of becoming a study on global history of nursing in a way. And so
these are some of the really great archival photos that are at the Suna Karaçadar library. So this was interesting to find these, and they're quite a give us quite a look at nurses and the different sorts of activities and pantomimes and things, performances that were going on.
And we also see kind of the loss of, like with the architecture as well, the loss of that medical humanities aspect in nursing education, because like in the earlier years, as you can see here, nursing education involved lots of social activities like theater and arts and so on. And in later years, we see more of a focus on classroom education and bedside education, and as opposed to communication, and more informatics, and lab space grows, and the theater space, which you see here, shrinks in the plans, like in the adjustments made to the building over time. So the medical humanities is basically trying to bring that back to nursing and medical education. And this is one of the student cartoons that we found in one of the yearbooks, which is also interesting.
Yeah, some of it. I think we can, yeah. So yeah. Just again, more. The other project, just really quickly, is birth as a sensory experience, and this is looking at some of the different birth traditions in Turkey. And so, just really quickly, do you want to mention something about that?
So this study is mostly like, in terms of methodology, we make use of oral history and narratives of people who gave birth in hospital settings. And we try to understand what works and what doesn't work. And we have tried to make a list of different traditions and how they contribute to a pleasant birth experience or an unpleasant one at times. And we are also questioning to what extent hospitals should make an effort to accommodate such traditions. And there are also newly developed traditions, obviously, in Turkey, for example, like decorating the hospital corridors and rooms and doors and so on. And we are trying to find ways in which interior architecture of the hospital can accommodate such practices more easily. And so in our research, for example, we discovered that receiving guests was a big problem, and also a very pleasant experience at the same time. So one of the problems we are trying to find answers to is how we can make sure that like people giving birth can receive guests, but also have privacy at the same time. And we are also focusing on sensory experiences, like how sound and smell or touch influences the birth experience. I won't be going into details in the interest of time, but we came up with some preliminary recommendations. And this project is going to be contributing to the guidance document that's being prepared for the NHS in the UK and for the working group that I'm in, supported by UK Research and Innovation. Implement these recommendations in the future in hospitals and put it in practice. And lastly, if you want to introduce.
Yeah, just the last project that we're interested in, as I mentioned, was the Museums of Medicine. Well, the panel that we were the chair of was Medicine and Science, but we're particularly interested in medical museums. And those are actually quite interesting, especially Turkish examples of them are quite interesting. One very famous one is the Darüşşafa in Bursa, excuse me, in Edirne. And this is something which is, I mean, medical museums will have a very, as I said, a wide range of missions and purposes. And what we find in Turkey is very often the medical museums are being kind of promoting this idea of more advanced Islamic science versus sort of Western medicine. A lot of it highlighting the sort of sensory aspects, particularly sound and music, which is something that was very much a part of the hospital here in Edirne. So this is something which sort of shapes the rationale behind a lot of medical museums in Turkey, whereas you'll find medical museums in different parts of the world really focusing on quite different aspects of medicine, using it maybe a little bit less for kind of these comparisons between past medical systems. But certainly one very interesting character, because you run across some fascinating people in the archives, is Hikmet Hamdi. I don't know if you wanted to just wrap up with
basically, like the idea of a medical museum in a Western sense or European sense is based on the early European idea of this cabinet of curiosities. And in the late 19th century, early 20th century, this evolved into an educational space within medical schools. And the same trend occurred in the Ottoman Empire as well, in the late Ottoman Empire. And the first Museum of Medicine was founded by Dr. Hikmet Hamdi, who was a painter and a physician at the same time. And he was sent to Germany by Adnan, Dr. Adnan, who later took the name of Adnan Adıvar. He was married to Halide Edip Adıvar, and who saw medical museums, which were an integral part of medical schools in Germany, where he trained, and he wanted to do the same in the Ottoman Empire. So he recruited Hikmet Hamdi for the job of establishing this museum, and he was sent to Germany to examine these museums. And later it started with an exhibition and then turned into an actual educational institution, which was a medical museum in the European sense. And today there is an exhibition about the museum, that was founded by Dr. Hikmet Hamdi. It's right across the street from Ayasofya in Sultanahmet, if you want to visit it. So I guess we can wrap it up now.
Yeah. Sorry, we went a little bit over, quite a bit over, sorry. But those are the different projects that we're involved in now, and it, as part of the initiative. And it's open, the initiative is certainly open to anybody who'd like to join. We have not just Koç University, we have a lot of people who are just interested working from different universities as well.
Different.
So thank you.
Thank you, thanks.
Thank you very much for all the interesting talk that we have had today. And we are indeed a bit late, so I will give the word right away to Seyhan, because I know that he has already some comments and a couple of questions to ask. So please go ahead.
Oh, yes, actually, I was planning to write in the chat, but I can also ask you. Thank you so much for this amazing and very exciting panel. And I do actually have two questions for all the speakers. I mean, this was very inspirational for me. I was taking lots of notes, and I mean, the importance of this panel is just, it helps us really imagine all the possibilities that didn't occur to our minds as researchers. And now I'm think of, oh, I could have done this, I could have done that. So that's amazing. So it's really open for me. So my first question is about institutional changes. I mean, I think Lucienne, Hoca, Thys-Şenocak also touch upon that. But I mean, do you have any suggestions on how institutions can make changes to generate more collaborations between social sciences and STEM scientists? Because, and like, help us overcome some preconceived notions. I mean, social scientists may think certain things about certain STEM fields, and STEM researchers may have certain ideas about social sciences. So how can institutional changes help us overcome some of these preconceived notions? So that will be my first question for all the speakers. And my other question will be about the training process. So, for example, I can talk about myself. I'm a researcher in humanities, and I do really want to engage with STEM fields, but often I have this anxiety because I don't have any training in the STEM, and what am I gonna do? And so basically, to what extent can and should social science researchers learn about methods in STEM fields? So should they rely on colleagues from STEM if it takes too much commitment, for instance, to learn things like network analysis? Likewise, to what extent should STEM researchers become acquainted with social science research for collaborative projects? So the other questions based about the training. So thank you so much. I'll leave the floor to all the speakers.
May I jump in?
Yes, please go ahead.
I think one of the, that's like both questions are, I think, great. And one of the things that we can do, and like we're trying to do at Koç, for example, is to offer courses that can bring together different disciplines and lectures from different disciplines, and try to maybe develop syllabi together. And this kind of like creates that opportunity to, you know, look at what the others are doing and how we can actually bring things together. And the symposium that for example, was also great. And it would be nicer to have more people from medicine, for example, presenting at conferences that are social science oriented. And we have to kind of be more open-minded about you know, where the line can be drawn between medicine, science, and social sciences, arts, humanities, engineering, and so on. And in terms of having the courage to, you know, like train yourself or learn, find out more about other fields. I had the experience with neuroscience, for example. I was always very interested in neuroscience, and I did have the opportunity to take several courses. And then Lucienne and I became members of Academy of Neuroscience for Architecture. And there is so much collaboration between the two fields, architecture and neuroscience, which people don't realize. And on either of the fields. And we have to kind of find those intersections, I guess, and there are institutions which might now be very niche, but these are opening up more and becoming, especially with the pandemic, everything being available online, all these conferences being organized online, people are becoming more aware of what people in different fields are doing. And so I think you should just take that step and enroll in a course that you have never studied before and you don't know where it might take you. And in terms of medicine, for example, if there is anyone who's interested in the field, there are programs like narrative medicine at Columbia, which again, Lucienne and I did the certificate program there. And also Harvard Medical School, I had the opportunity to complete 2 certificate programs in ethics and research methodology in health sciences, which Harvard Medical School and Koç University School of Medicine actually jointly offer. This happens every summer. It's in person, and you know, they are very open to accepting people from different disciplines, although it's mostly people who are from medicine background. And so, yeah, that's all I can say for now.
Maybe I can add, if there isn't any further elaboration on what Uğur said. Yeah, I think collaborations takes time until people from two different fields with deep expertise into separate things to be understood, to come up with projects, first the small steps, some misunderstandings, and maybe after a while, some joint effort towards some grants or courses. It takes time, and we would not be able to do it in a Koç University without structural funding. It wasn't a structural funding. It was what Erdem Yörük, the stream of funding he could created. So if the school want to do anything in this line, it should be, they should hire people to really spend time there. When there is a lecturing something, they should keep people a bit more comfortable in terms of conditions. In 5 years, I did really a lot in Koç University, but due to a lot of this kind of stuff I mentioned, now I'm in the Netherlands. And it was just starting to nurturing, and you never see any structural, really solid support. They are really honest, they really give opportunity, whatever. But if you look to the financial conditions or social security, whatever, it is nothing. And you can't expect anything to happen. This is life. Anyway, now and then ad hoc stuff happens, and we hope to reach to some level, and the culture develops and people see the need, maybe it becomes the trend and hiring or whatever happens. This is one thing. The other thing, for how people can, can you remind me quickly the second question?
The second question is about the training, you know, so I mean, whether to what extent, or should, for instance, a social scientist become familiar with, say, STEM methods? Is it a challenge, or how challenging is it? And the other way around, you know, or maybe is it better if, for instance, a social scientist stays as a social scientist and just collaborates with the computer scientists or like medical researchers? So how would you envision that?
I understand. At the end, it should remain interdisciplinary, I think. Social scientists should be more social scientists. Computer scientists should be more computer scientists. But we learn a lot from each other. I learned really a lot, where to speak, where not to speak, where can I go deeper, where should I shut up. The same for social science friends. They really learned a lot. And now we have a dialogue. I don't expect them to do a deep learning programming or dealing with big data. It is a couple of hours for me. But they don't expect from me to really interpret all these social science theories and how they interact with each other, their history. I tried, it didn't work. The personal experience, because my mind is mostly to apply things and their mind to understand things. Therefore, I think it should remain interdisciplinary. We have a new generation that will surprise us, new PhD students who are trained in the combination, and they may be doing something else. This will not be interdisciplinary anymore. It will be its own discipline, but not by computer scientists becoming social scientists and social scientists becoming computer scientists. This would be my comment.
Answers are very mind-opening, actually, and it really, yes, I think.
Thanks for the questions.
No, yes, you are welcome.
Maybe I can add from here, as it is computational social science based. it should stay, of course, interdisciplinary, but I think we can overcome the anxiety as well, because anxiety from both sides. It's usually social, but it happens from engineering and computer scientists coming into full of social scientists meeting too. They are talking about theories and everything, and they want to catch up with the applied projects. So it comes first with the acceptance that everyone has their own skills level and all of them are valuable. And we want to, of course, collaborate and understand each other. To understand more, I really encourage my colleagues and also students to have, of course, more technical skills so that we can fine-tune our analysis or find better ways to solve the problems as well in both ways. And how we can find those trainings, it depends on the personal, of course, interest, if you want to develop your technical skills too. But with this new generation, as everything is online shared, we sometimes even don't need to pay for trainings. So at GESIS, for instance, with the Social Comquant project, it is really amazing what has happened so far in this year and how many participants joined us and improve their skills and apply their social science projects by themselves. And with this, maybe I can answer to your first questions, the institutional change, and I agree with Uğurgül and Ali as well. Definitely it should be supported by the institution and there should be maybe courses, but I benefit a lot to take elective courses. For instance, for my master's thesis, I was in industrial engineering department, but I could take economics course to better understand income inequality. And then that professor became my co-advisor for my master's thesis so that we can collaborate better. And then this collaboration continued. So I really appreciate elective courses and students' projects that can combine also organically professors together. And if the institution is flexible enough, not to say, okay, engineers cannot take the, this course or that course, then the institutions can become maybe more flexible in interdisciplinary research.
Yes, no, that's very important, and that's a key way to overcome the anxiety too, or at least to lessen that, because that's one of the key problems often when it comes to this kind of collaborative projects. So thank you.
If I could just add, I completely agree with Gizem. I mean, actually, with all what everybody has said, Ali and Uğurgül. I do think, though, I disagree a little bit, Ali, with you, because I do think that we live a long time, hopefully. So our careers can really span, several decades. And so I do think that while you might not be able to become, say, an expert in one field, you can actually get fairly far if you're dedicated to that. So, I mean, I very much encourage our graduate students and our students in general to really develop skills that they can use in a lot of different kinds of disciplines, because we don't know where we're headed really, and we don't know what kinds of skill sets we're going to need, but we should be ready to jump into something and at least know what we can know, what we can't know in a certain number of years. So I think collaboration is essential, and it takes a lot longer than you think between different disciplines. Just an example that we ran into that I always look back on when we were talking about what to call our initiative, and we first said, well, with the other faculty from the medical school, and we said, well, critical medical humanities, and they were saying, well, critical, that sounds like critical care. That doesn't sound like something that's not a nice word for us. So I think also being sensitive to the different discourses in different fields, and not, trying to communicate in ways that are not intimidating, because that's where we really run into problems, I think, in all our fields, is that we tend to get really into our own discourses, and really we make it very difficult for people outside our fields to understand. So I do think that we can be much better about that. And Gizem, about taking electives, I absolutely agree that I mean, the more flexible a curriculum is, the more chance you have to develop these different skills. And that might mean, for example, a number of our students in, say, heritage management take classes in the business school, or Uğurgül's taken neuroscience. And you should be able to follow your path in a university where you have all these different courses that are offered. You should be able, to explore those. So I think these rigid disciplinary requirements are really outdated. And I would say that needs to go by the wayside. That's our big challenge with the medical school, is they have such a structured curriculum. Into their upper levels past the second year, they're just chock-a-block full with their medical courses, and it's hard to make an argument still that these humanities courses are equally as important as learning, hematology or other sorts of things that are science. So that's always a little bit of the problem, I think, if you're on the humanities side of the STEM world, is that it tends to get looked at as less crucial, less rigorous, and less important. And that's I think we face that challenge with medical and health humanities.
I just want to add something positive. So we have actually now one student who is double majoring in medicine and ARHA, in archaeology and history of art. And there are other students from medicine who are interested in minoring in archaeology and history of art, who are medical students. And they were mostly introduced to the discipline through the course that we are offering, the Art and Medicine course, which is a 100-level course. And I think this is a very promising thing. And I hope it will lead to more people becoming experts in multiple disciplines.
This is very encouraging and very promising to hear too. So thank you so much. All these comment suggestions are very helpful and very inspiring. Thank you. Very important.
Thank you very much to all. I have to jump in because we are really running out of time. We are 20 minutes out of our normal schedule. So I would like to thank you, everyone. And for the participant, do not worry. If you will have any question, I'm sure you would be happy to answer even on emails. And if you don't know the email of the speaker, you can reach out to me or to Ceyhan, and then we will connect you all to the other speaker. That would not be a problem. I will upload the recording on YouTube if you want to rewatch or you miss some parts. And yeah, thank you again to all the speaker. I wish you a nice evening and a good start of the summer. Hope you will have the time to enjoy some holidays. And thank you again for accepting our invitation. Thank you again for your lovely presentation. It was really an interesting topic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you very much.
Bye.
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 Bye.